Is it possible to live a longer quality life after a heart disease diagnosis? We are the patients who have resolved to become healthier, both physically and mentally. From managing symptoms to managing side effects, from managing medication to managing finances. We share the challenges and the triumphs. Discover what it really means to survive and thrive with a heart condition. This is Living with Heart Disease, a Heart of a Giant production. Here is our host, Somane Bouba.
All right, welcome. Today we're talking to John Sanson. I hope I'm saying it right. Was a heart patient I met probably 2 years back on Instagram. We've been chatting then a lot and a bit less now. But today is a good day to reconnect with you, to hear about your journey, which has had some, recent updates included. So let's get started. And I think the first question is, if we ask John, who's John, what will you say?
Hi, I'm John. I was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy back in 2016. Since then, had LVAD, then transplant. And that's been kind of my short-term, quick answer of who I am and what I've been through the last few years.
Nice. Thanks a lot. And where do you live right now, and who do you live with? What are you based?
So I am based out of Houston, Texas. I live literally right outside of downtown. I live with my wife, our 2 dogs and a cat, no kids. So, yeah.
That's a busy place. Because, between the 2 dogs and the cat, I wonder how they get along. But thanks so much for getting in touch. I think we have a similar story. I was also initially diagnosed with DCM, but in 2012, and then it escalated eventually to being on the transplant list, and then having the LVAD. And so I'm glad that you went through all those steps. But I'm amazed at how quickly all of this happened. It seems like all of this happened in a matter of 5-6 years.
Yep.
So maybe we'll start by, taking us back to the beginning. Like, how did you find out what was going on in life? Yeah, how was the diagnosis process like for you? And then maybe the folks around you.
So in 2016, I went for some GI scopes. Wasn't even related to anything cardiac. I had no symptoms prior to that. And best way to describe it is my body was kind of compensating, balancing out. So I wasn't showing symptoms. Then having the anesthesia threw off that compensation. And then I went from no symptoms to fully symptomatic within like a few days. So basically in March of 2016, I was only home for 3 days. So yeah. And from there, it was just, we could kind of guesstimate that my heart failure started 10 years prior. But it just kind of, my body compensated. I was still young at the time. Like I was only 32 when I was diagnosed.
Yeah. You say you went for a GI scope. So what was the reason you had a scope?
I had a doctor that wanted to be a little more cautious because of my size. At the time, I was about 300 pounds. And I was supposed to go for another procedure, but they wanted to get the GI scopes, just kind of have clearance and make sure everything was okay first there.
You say you were over 300 pounds, and I know you're an inspiration, but I know you've shedded a lot of pounds. Yeah. So what are you right now, if I may ask?
So right now I'm 240. So I started my journey when I had my LVAD, I also had a gastric sleeve.
Oh.
And I was 350 pounds at that time. I lost 150, got down to 200. But as we know, prednisone and other transplant meds do work on your body.
Yeah.
So I went back up to 240, which I'm still happy with where my weight's at. There's still to be lost, but prednisone, like I said, other medications does a number to your body.
Yeah, and you come back, but this is impressive though. Like 100 pounds that's quite a journey, and I think I'll circle back to that definitely. But yeah, so you mentioned, you went into, you started showing symptoms, and I wanted to hear what was that like. You mentioned you have a partner you stay with, so what was that like in terms of how she reacted to it, and what was that going through your mind in that moment? Because that's, that must come as a shock, especially if they explain that you have had it for maybe more than 10 years. So that will, I don't know how I'll react to that.
That was kind of a very nerve-wracking moment because for the first 2 weeks, we just like fluid was around my lungs. I was getting swollen. I was short of breath. So it was kind of hard navigating that. Like one of the few days I was home, we actually went to my cardiologist that I literally haven't met yet. Then hospital a few days later. where had my first interaction with the heart cath, which that is the whole ordeal. So yeah, like it was very nerve wracking because you're young. You're like, oh, it can't be my heart, and find out like, oh, you're in end stage heart failure.
Yes. Yeah. What are the options that the medical team proposed or put forward to you? What were your options at that moment?
So after the heart cath, the whole ordeal with the doctor, he pretty much met me in the ER saying that he would guarantee that I would have a coronary artery disease, clogged arteries. Did the heart cath and nothing was there. So still, while I didn't even have a room yet, so he actually sent his residents and interns to talk to me. They're like, "Oh, here's your EF, which was below 20 at that time."
Wow.
I'm like, "You most likely would have to get LVAD, and you'll need a transplant eventually." And that was like day one of diagnosis, and that was like all they laid on the table.
I mean, that's a lot of information. And for those who don't know, EF, ejection fraction, is the capacity of your heart pumping, and the normal range is 50 to 70%, and you mentioned you're below 20%, and yeah, that's a low number. But the part I just hear now is so that your doctor didn't come tell you this information. It was the fellows.
Yeah,
and that's a lot of big news, right? I mean, I don't even know. Did you know about the LVAD before that? Did you know about?
no, I knew about it because of things like Grey's Anatomy and stuff like that, but not like what it was in the current state of what LVAD was, or still technically is with HeartMate 3 and stuff like that. But yeah, I had no clue of what that was at that point.
My God! And then what about the transplant? I mean, the idea of a transplant for me, that was a shock. It was a lot of emotion at the same time, but I don't know how. Yeah, I'm curious to hear how you reacted to that.
At that point, I think I was still in denial. Like me and my wife were going like, oh, because she was still in nursing school at the time.
Oh yeah.
It was like, what else can we do to maybe heal my heart? Whatever way that looked like. If the medication is stabilized things and reverse everything, we kind of went that route, kind of denial on some things of where everything was going to be headed. So yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that part in terms of, I think for me, it was trying to stay positive. Of course, you only look at the good part, but like you said, it's a big denial. And obviously, in general, that has a negative connotation, but I wanted to hear from you. What do you think that was? I mean, was that a good thing after everything, to be at least for that period, to feel like, okay, we can do this, we can reverse this, or something like that. Was that feeling or that sentiment or even that thinking helpful?
I think at the beginning it was somewhat helpful because it was a lot having to go see doctors still every month, stuff like that. Even at the first few years, I was changing teams because of insurance. I work in the hospitality side of things, so insurance isn't widely available. So going through different teams, seeing what treatments were there, and even having to change doctors like once a year was kind of rough. I think having that positive mentality was there, but at the same time, like it was still that denial thing and things would get better, but you kept feeling worse. I had more hospitalizations than I ever had in the first few years of heart failure than the previous 30 years of my life.
Yes. That's it. That's also just being at the hospital. I know that's a challenge to a lot of people. Just being there. It's like a theater, right? A lot of things are happening.
Yep.
But in this case, even though you're the main actor, so to speak, things are just happening to you. So yeah, going in and out of the hospital, and that means that your wife couldn't study at the time, because I mean, at least study very well if she had to take you, or was there other people helping you back and forth from the hospital, and then going through this moment?
I think at that point, like we were a 2-car family at the time, so it's like we could manage that. There were some tougher times where it was a lot more of a struggle. There were definitely some friends and family that did help at times, but it was mostly just kind of dependent on me and my wife.
That's it. That's tough. But grateful for it because I know in my case, when we were talking about the LVAD process, my nurses explained to me that your support system will be key, especially in this case. So I think before I move on to the next question I have in mind is we can talk about who else is kind of part of this support system that has been helping you, navigate this journey in and out of the hospital.
Like the biggest support has been my wife, and we've had family that has been able to help out, as far as be able to take us appointments. When I after I get done with surgeries, we're able to stay with family. So that's been the biggest support. I think there's been people along the way that have definitely shown different ways of support, like especially when it comes to financially stuff like that. But it's still just because a lot of my stuff, like surgery wise, happened in the middle of the pandemic. So that's been another navigation. But in the early years, it's been we were kind of self sustaining on that part, which was hard.
And did you get COVID? Just for I'll ask before I forget. At any point?
Man. So yes, I did catch COVID once when I still had my LVAD. I broke a tooth, and because of being on blood thinners, they sent me to the hospital ER. There was a guy that refused to mask up. He came in hot via ambulance, not wanting to wear a mask, full symptomatic, and because I was just a few feet away from him in the waiting room, I ended up catching it. I found out the day before I was supposed to have surgery. They did the workup, got the COVID swab, 2:00 in the morning. Like, oh, you're in isolation. You got to move to the COVID room.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, okay.
And that was tough. My story was a bit different. I caught it at home, but I wasn't very systematic and I stayed home. But I know it was the biggest fear for my medical team because, we know the VAD, but we don't know how the VAD and COVID, because COVID was still early in those days. We didn't know how somebody with a VAD would react to COVID. So how was that for you? Were you like very symptomatic?
I was fully asymptomatic. I had no issues. So that's after about, I think 5-6 days in the hospital, they sent me home and that was it.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's good. I'm happy for that because it can be scary, especially if it's unknown territory. So I guess the VAD we won't say too much praise about it, but I guess the VAD is not a disadvantage in this case, at least. So first, I want to know, where are you now? Are you like in a okay place or stable place? But then how is it like to navigate this system? That's a lot. And like you mentioned, the financial burden and we don't, I guess we're grateful to just be alive, but that's something that is the biggest stress, to our lives. So, how are you navigating all of that? That's a lot that alone can, give you a heart failure. But yeah, so how are you managing all of that?
So I'm in with the team that I really like a lot. I am able to see one doctor consistently, and even with my coordinator, my transplant coordinator, we have really good communication. My previous team, where I did get my transplant at, there was just a lot of things where it just wasn't best communication. My wife also worked at the hospital, so there were some weird things that happened where some doctors crossed the line talking to her more as a coworker nurse versus a family member. So the team I'm with now, I'm at now, was the same one I had previously where I got my LVAD. So I enjoyed the clinic there, all that stuff. And navigating between the different systems through heart failure to where I'm at now. I've seen pretty much all three major transplant clinics here in Houston, and I feel the one I'm at now is the best. I've been at one where the state and federal government was actually investigating them for some stuff on the heart failure side and LVAD side. That's part of the reason why we decided to leave. And navigating the insurance has been the biggest headache, just because every insurance company has their own view of what's like specialty meds are and how you get access to those. That is kind of the biggest struggle because every time you change, that means your deductible changes, your out of pocket changes.
Yeah, that's a lot because you gotta have you gotta be lucid, you gotta be calm, you gotta manage all of that. So I couldn't imagine. And what do you do for life right now? How do you keep busy, and how are you able to sustain some of these expenses and even having the time or the flexibility with time to do these visits and back and forth? So how you doing all of that?
So I work in the coffee industry. I've done roasting and stuff like that. I work back as a barista currently for a company that they're very willing to give me time off when I need to. Like when I was in the hospital for a few weeks ago, I knew going in that I would be coming out with a job. They're very much people friendly, worker friendly. Spending my time right now. I do a lot of photography, like street photography and stuff like that. I also am working on a documentary right now for a video series about coffee. So that's taken up a lot of my time. But as far as the medical cost, because insurance system, the way America is right now, I'm sitting about maybe 50,000 worth of medical debt that I can't unfortunately pay just because like I'm barely making ends meet. And with the cost of actually seeing doctors, it is what it is for me right now. Like it's just where it is.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's totally impossible. And I can, that's the one thing I can relate to in a sense that I remember 2, 3 months ago, I went to see my credit record. I was like, why is my credit score not going up? And there was a bill from 2016 that was still there, a few couple of thousands. And then I didn't even remember, like, because I saw the people at the hospital and I'm like, okay, I'll order hospital. So that's, like you said, that's already, a lot of money. But there are bills out there that you don't even, you cannot even keep up with.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that, you have the really good support in terms of the employment, because even that alone, I call my I work here now full time, but I tell them, thank you for this distraction from life. Because, at least when I'm there, I forget about being, ill and all of that. So I can imagine the benefit that they have for you, and then also the flexibility to allow you to go to your visit and so on and so forth. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the photography, because that's how I kind of noticed you online. And I know I saw something, and maybe I might be wrong, but I saw, I don't know if it's 5 pounds or 5 OZ creative. How do you say it? What is that? I loved.
It's 5 ounce creative.
Great.
So it's basically a little nod to the coffee side of my life. So 5 ounces is a traditional size, like flat white style cup. Like, so yeah, it's your traditional size of coffee.
Yeah, I love it. And tell me more about that. Like, how's that? How long have you been doing like the art and, in terms of photography and video and all of that? But also, how's that been helpful to you in your journey right now?
So I've always had a creative side of me. I grew up as a musician. Like I was on a stage from 14 till I was about 28. The photography originally started probably about maybe 10, 12 years ago, alongside some graphic design work I was doing at the time. But as far as like 5 ounce creative, that started really during the middle of the pandemic while I still had my LVAD. I started off as 5 ounce film. So I did a lot of film photography, my own development, just because I was still on my weight loss journey. So I was walking downtown, seeing a few coffee shops. So a lot of my stuff was done photography wise. And yeah, so that's how 5 ounce creative kind of came about. The current project I'm working on literally was a random throw in the air back in January. I was like, what if we highlighted the coffee industry here in Houston and not review, not anything like that, but just highlight what makes us unique, and ended up doing a little small Kickstarter and ended up getting funded. So yeah, so that was just kind of fun. That's how that kind of all came in.
Love that. And then, so you have also see social media management. What does that sound like, or what is that about?
So right now I am actually started the process of managing my workplace's Instagram and managing that aspect of things. So it's just creating content and really trying to create engagement. Is more about engagement. Like it's blind to likes, but it's more about engagement and helping businesses.
We can see the proof here. So I'm excited for that. And so a little bit more about the business side and also the work side. How can I'm looking forward to the documentary first. I don't know if there's a timeline. How can the public or any of us support you, and what would you like? How can we be useful to the project and contribute to the project? If there's a way to get in touch with you, any of us can be useful to the project and help the project go faster, or improve, or whatever it needs to be that you need on your side.
So right now there's nothing that we can move faster. I'm just kind of slow things down on purpose. Also be able to make a better quality of product, because back in January I thought I could hit the ground running, produce it really quick. But as things kind of happen, life speed bumps, sliced my hand open so I can work a camera for a month and a half. Then wife's job kind of changed up. So all these life things happened, but it happened at good timing where I can slow the project down and refocus on it. So the best way people can help out is when I put out content up for that, is just share it. Because there is another bigger documentary coming along that is still kind of in the works and finding how to navigate that. But yeah.
No, great. So we'll definitely be on the lookout, and we can save, like, share, definitely. And my team and I will definitely do that on our side. So I'm excited. I think for me, as a fellow LVAD person, I'm always curious to hear what is the LVAD to you, right? What is it to you? What does it mean to you? Like, did you give it a nickname? And what's that relationship been like? Because I think it's something new to most people, but it might be different, specific to you too.
Man, the LVAD was probably, as much as I appreciated it, that it gave me a time to get from where I was to be able to get a transplant. It's also probably one of the things that was the hardest thing for me, because I originally, part of my story is I was going to decline surgery. Like that morning, I already had in my mind I was going to decline surgery. I had to find out really through even that mental, I guess, struggle that morning, find my why, which was my nephew, my family. Like the tipping point was a nurse that I really kind of connected with while I was in ICU, kind of gave encouragement. And I was just like, all right, let's go for this ride. It's still a memory of like some hardship there, just being so young. And I was not wanting to be on life support, but now having this life support keep me alive.
Yeah. It's something new. And then, like you said, you were young and you say you were 30, was it 32?
When I got my LVAD, I was 35 going 36.
Yeah. And, like being a similar age, I feel like that's when you are like, you are the most man, like you are the most you, right? So,
yeah.
So I can imagine, yeah. And then the way you're saying it, going life support, that's definitely it. Because as much as you might look like you're fine, you're a normal person, you hanging on a pump, a small device that can, get infected, get damaged or whatever. So how long have you had the LVAD and what were some of those challenges?
So I had my LVAD from September 2019, like literally 4 months before the pandemic went crazy. Then I had my transplant March of 2021. I think some of the challenges was like I was in the hospital for 2 months after LVAD. I got out for a day, then had a pulmonary embolism and had to go back in. So I had to deal with the pulmonary embolism plus my chest incision at that time wasn't healing right. So they had to redo my chest incision. So it's just like a really painful recovery process for that. Some of the challenges were I dealt with syncope. So because I was losing weight, my blood pressure would fluctuate. I did end up with a driveline infection. That's what kind of sped up the process from LVAD to transplant. Then just in and out of the hospital for the small things like the tooth surgery and all that stuff. Like it just was challenging navigating that. Then also still navigating life in mid-pandemic because like even though you're healthy with your LVAD, your immune system is still fighting off this kind of external thing they don't know. So like there's just that battle. Like if I get sick, how sick am I going to get? So yeah.
And what to do from there. That's so much. That's a lot because you have the syncopes a lot is so dangerous, right? Because you're on blood thinners, right? And you can fall and, anything can happen. You can have an aneurysm. And that must have been super scary. And then you mentioned the pulmonary embolism too. And, those clots, that's a lot of fear. So I wonder, no wonder why you don't really like the LVAD experience because those probably the toughest part. And the worst for me, like you're saying, I didn't get any of the embolism. I did get some syncopes last year, but that was also because I was losing blood I was having GI bleeds. But the toughest part is definitely, like you say, opening your chest and closing it and then going through that again. Because that's like the worst. It's like you've been hit by, I don't know, multiple drugs. Yeah, how do you go through those, like the syncops and then go through that? And how was that for you? And then I guess the second part is like, what helped you go through that? Because that's tough. It makes you want to, I don't know, give up and, I don't know, just be like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I think between the multiple hospital stays, like the syncope was a little bit of the scary part just because it would randomly happen. Like I only had probably about 3 episodes, and part of it was they were adjusting my speed. And every time they adjusted speed, my body didn't like it. So my body, best way to describe it is you have those 1% side effects. That is me. So anything that a little bit of change my body doesn't like. So that is what kind of happened with a lot of those events. One is CKP event. I actually had to drive myself to the hospital afterwards. They gave me my flu and pneumonia shot the same day, and my body just did not react well to that.
Wow.
And the reason why, like when I was in the hospital, made it a little bit easier. So my wife actually worked on the heart failure unit that cared for LVADs. So like she was able to kind of sneak in, visit me. Also like at the hospital I was at, we were able to kind of freely move around the hospital. So like I got a routine, like working at coffee. I would go down to the coffee shop downstairs, have that routine of getting up between the shift changes to do that, have like the morning routine.
Yes.
Even though the hospital I'm at now, they're not so lenient. I have to stay in my room. I can't leave the floor type of deal. But when I was at the hospital stays, I was able to go down and have that routine that kind of helped things out. The mental struggle, even just with the LVAD, kind of hit a point in September 2020. Like it was just to the point, like being the hospitalizations and just still going in my mind of kind of regretting my choice at that point. Like I've always had that go back and forth. Like I'm thankful, but I also like I didn't make this choice for me type of thing.
Yes.
So that played a big mental factor. Like where I finally had to reach out to a few friends, be like, "Hey, this is what's going on. I'm not in a good mental place. Like I just need to talk some things out." So yeah.
I'm thankful to those friends because I do remember some of those moments where you're like, I'm done with this, or I cannot take it. And then even your family, your wife around you, like it's a lot on them too. So,
Yep.
But as you mentioned, she being able to sneak in and see you, I think that was helpful, especially during the pandemic. And it made me think, was she planning to go into heart failure like when she was in nursing school, or did your journey affect that decision?
It's kind of 50-50. She already enjoyed cardiac while she was in nursing school. And the reason why she applied where she was at was I was at another hospital system, and we basically had a doctor tell us, hey, to save your life, because already knew I needed LVAD. They're like, to save your life, you need to change insurance companies. And this is one of the openings she saw, so she applied for it and went for it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And it's funny how, this life stops you on a path and then, you find a way around it, and sometimes even better. I appreciate that a lot. So fast forward to the transplant. I was excited because I think that's what, like, we haven't talked in a while, but I saw the announcement on Instagram and I was super excited for you. But how was that like? And I mean, you've been on a list for a few years. Like, what was that day like? And when you got the call, and then, we'll take it from there.
So I officially was only on the list for 28 days. Even though I had the LVAD since September 2019, my BMI wasn't in range. So I had to lose that 150 pounds to be in that range for him.
Yes.
It was more exciting at that point for me and taking less stress off my mind. Because like I said a little bit ago, like I dealt with a driveline infection that ended up spreading to my blood. So I dealt that with from December 2020 to January 2021. Like I was in the hospital again, in and out. Like I think for those 2 months, I was only home like maybe for a week, and that was like for my birthday and Christmas, and that was it. The infection was pretty bad, pretty gnarly. But when I finally got to call, it was really exciting not to know that I didn't have to deal with this life like endangering infection. When they took out my LVAD and did pathology on it, they actually found that the infection was on the pump itself inside my heart. So like it could have gone really dangerous really quick, more than what we knew. I was supposed to get my pump back. And they're like, yeah, it's so contaminated, we can't give it back to you.
Yes, that's not safe. Wow. You're a miracle in that way. I mean, I don't like using that word. I don't like using miracle or blessed because it's a lot of work you're going through, right? And, everybody has different meaning. But that's a lot. Like you escape this so many times. And it's just amazing how you're able to keep your smile. Yeah, like I'm impressed. But like, so you get a new heart and then what now? Like what is that moment like for you? What it's like, because I guess you were down for maybe a few days. I'm not sure how what was the protocol there, but how was that for you? Like to wake up and feel this new heartbeat inside you?
It was, so the first few days was definitely like when you get out of having LVAD surgery, you're still kind of loopy from the drugs and stuff like that. Like it felt a lot more like literally the weight off your shoulders. Cause literally we carry around this 8-10 pound bag for so long. Yes. It becomes used to it. Like I remember grabbing, like I had my chest tube at that time, but still grabbing for where the driveline was like, it's not there anymore. Like you're so used to that being there.
Yeah.
Like I remember for the first like week or two, like every time I get up, I'm used to trying to grab for a bag and it's just no bag. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's a similar line of things, but it's amazing how you get used to living one way and now you're switching to living, a new way, so living with the LVAD, you have to carry this backup, you have to have the system on you. How's it like now? Like what's the day-to-day life since the transplant, and what are some of the like what are you right now in terms of that's your heart health journey?
Heart health wise is fine. There was a few little hiccups, like again after a transplant. I had another blood clot for like just a few days. They gave me blood thinners, everything fine. I haven't had any major rejection. I had one R, which is the lowest form of rejection, for one biopsy. Then they gave me steroids, went away. Haven't had any other issues. I've had some small hiccups that isn't related to the heart issue, but yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Day to day, it's pretty normal. Take my meds. I'm back to working. I started working again probably a little bit over a year ago. I wanted to kind of, my whole thing was fight back for some normalcy.
And how important was it, to get back to, you're fighting back for it, but like, I think for those that don't know what it is to live with this condition and trying to be normal, or fighting for what does normal mean to you? Like, what does it mean to be able to do normal? And maybe like also for context, how many hours are you able to work now that you're back to work? And then what are some of the other things? I mean, we talked about the photography, the video, and some of the other stuff. But what are some of the other things you're able to do now that, you've been doing now that you didn't do when you were on LVAD or even before?
So now I'm able to ride my bike. It's like super hot in Texas. I'm kind of taking a break from that.
Yes, please do.
I ride my bike. I walk around. Like I actually usually take our rail line to my work here. So even just be able to do that without having to get winded or anything like that. Because even with LVAD, it made me feel better in a lot of ways. But in other ways, it still was a kind of weighing down effect. So I'm able to work right now. I work around 30 hours just because what I'm physically feel okay with. I try to work to 40, but my body just did not like it still with all the medicine. It takes, again, transplant meds. They save you, make sure you're not in rejection, but it also takes a toll on your joints, stuff like that.
Yes.
Gastric systems, all that fun stuff. So I found a balance working that 30 hours a week.
Yeah, and it will come back too. I mean, you get stronger and stronger, but like you mentioned, the adjustment to the meds and all of that is a lot. So, and then it's like, it sounds like a reset and that you're going through. And I'm just thinking of that word because I was checking your Instagram page and I'll show you a picture now when you were talking about reset. But so what's next? What's next now in terms of, John, what are some of the things you're looking forward to? You and your wife, your dogs and your cat. What's next? What should we be looking out for?
I think our biggest thing is try to travel again because we had some plans, again, with my wife. She was supposed to go be a travel nurse for a short period of time. And I was supposed to travel with her for a short period of time, like go visit where she's at.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be the biggest kind of hurdle for us just because, like, since, again, so much stuff has been placed on hold, like that is just something we haven't got to do. Like we've been able to take a few day trips, like here in Texas, but like to actually go out of state and travel is going to be kind of a big thing.
Yeah, that would be great. And traveling is fun. But do you have some kind of goals, like some places that you have in mind that you love to visit?
As far as goals, not really. I think for us it's just to get out there a little bit because like we were only married maybe 5 years when I was diagnosed with heart failure.
Yeah.
And so majority of the time we've been together, I've been sick. So that's literally kind of affected what we do.
Yeah.
When I was sick, like I would work my Monday through Friday job, but I would sleep every time outside of there. So with all that, I was able to have a little more energy, and now with transplants even more. So yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to the sleeping part, and my wife was not impressed at first because the little bit of energy I had, I would go and play soccer or something, and I'll come back home and crash and sleep the whole time. And of course, after work, he couldn't do much. Yeah, so that's quite an adjustment. This is the beginning of a conversation, but we're gonna definitely talk again. I would love to hear, from your wife's perspective at some point. But I wanted to take like a few, go through like memory line and see a few things especially on your social media, because that's how I've been like following your journey and stuff. And I like this one. And that's why I thought about like a reset or reset when you kind of restarted a new page. But this is in the middle of the LVAD, and I can see that.
Yep. That was my first journey outside of the hospital with the LVAD.
Wow.
So our thing is we usually would stop at restaurants, whatever, like after I get out of the hospital, like that's a coffee shop we frequently go to. So that's a nice little cafe to have lunch, have coffee. So that was one of our first stops outside of the hospital.
Yeah, that's special. And I'm glad it was so well captured, right? So I love it. You have a lot of cool pictures. I had to show this one. This is 2003, yeah, pre-beard and everything. So, and you did a comment yourself, like baby face. But yeah, this is special. When was this? This was it high school? Was it graduate?
Yeah, that's my high school graduation.
Yeah. What will you tell this young man if if you could tell him, yeah, like where you are now, and what will you tell him if you could go back in time?
Man, that is actually a tough one just because there's so much involved in other life stuff going on at that time. I would probably just tell myself to like keep on the path I was going on and you'll get where you're going. So that time it's like I really didn't know who my identity was in a lot of things.
That's good. I appreciate that. Like the growth. I have a few pictures here, and we'll wrap this up soon. But I love that you're sharing this and going through like it's a proper timeline, so you can see the evolution. Here is a big demonstration of like what you say, like 6 months, 80 pounds. It's amazing how you did that. But yeah, and the shirt? Yeah, the shirt is like it's like a blouse on you.
That's literally the same shirt. Yeah, after that picture, I threw that shirt away. But yeah, it's the same shirt. It's just like maybe a year difference.
Wow, that's amazing. That's impressive. How many sizes you went through? Like 50? Yeah, 50 to 42. Man, it's amazing. Because that kind of, for me, and the reason I'm pushing on that, that's a part that most people can see, right? Like what you're going through in your mind is tough, but what they can see is that. But the fact that you're able to do that, to me, it tells me how much you want to live, like how much you want to have this life, right? And then, so the question I have at this moment is like, why you want to stay in life? Because I think that's one part, right? Like there's quality of life, but what does life mean to you now that you've been going through this journey and, you keep on going?
So for me, my why through this whole process has been my nephew. He was the only, I have two sisters. He was the only nephew I had at the time. And so it was really focusing on, I didn't want him just to hear stories about me. I wanted him to actually experience and know me. So yeah, like that's actually him on the top. The top picture is actually me holding him while I just got done having my LVAD. That was like the day I was home. Like 24 hours, that was him coming to see me and hang out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And how old is he now?
He is 3 or 4 years old.
And what is it like for him? What does he ask you? Like, does he ask you about the LVAD? What are some of the things he says?
He actually does not. Like, he knows like when I'm sick, like kind of open and talking, having that discussion a little bit. Like he doesn't like seeing anybody in the hospital because he's still kind of afraid of all that. But yeah.
How long did the recovery take, more or less, between the time like this day and then that you were out, exercising and about?
So that took probably a good 6 months to get comfortable working out again, especially with LVAD being in the hospital for the 2 months, then the pandemic. I did go through cardiac rehab, which was for a few months for me, but we had some issues just with this whole situation with COVID in the hospital, just trying to get parking. Like I would have to miss visits. So we found out I can just go to Planet Fitness and it's closer. I can do this. Literally, they had the same machines as cardiac rehab. So I did that. I would say the recovery for transplant was a lot easier than LVAD.
Yes, that's encouraging.
Because I was out and about after your 2 months of letting the sternum heal. I was pretty much regular life within like the 2-3 months afterwards.
Yeah, that's something they kept telling me, and I wasn't, you just in the moment you just like, okay, whatever you say, all right. But they do tell you that the LVAD is prepares you for the transplant.
Cruise Ship 72 and LVAD Dad. So those two guys were some people I got connected with early on in my journey. Because when I first time at LVAD, it was you look on YouTube and there was Cruise Ship talking about it.
Yeah, that's helpful, and it's good that you guys are connecting. And then, basically have a light of the LVAD journey and then playing with the battery and things like that.
Yep. And actually, Cruise Ship came to Houston probably a few months ago. We actually got to hang out, go have some free birds. And yeah.
Yeah, that's special. Where does he live?
He's in Florida and I'm here in Texas. So he has some family down here and he stops down this way every once in a while. So yeah, we got to hang out and just not actually meet face to face.
Yeah. Okay. And then when are you going to Florida?
That would be eventually. Like my wife's a big Disney person, so eventually go out there. So yeah.
Yeah, how's it like to do those first steps? Because I hear, for me, I remember, coming to me and they're like, yeah, cough, take the first steps, start moving as soon as you can. But How were you feeling? Were you eager? Were you excited? Were you scared?
I was tired, just because the sedation and all that. Like my muscles were just felt weak. I remember again because I always carried my LVAD in a crossbody bag, so I always had like the slant. So try to offset that was just kind of weird.
This is amazing. But I can already see the difference, like how you look between the two videos, like after LVAD and after transplant. But also we can see in your smile, I have to go to that t-shirt that I saw. This one is a classic. I need to get this after I get my transplant. But this is special. And then you mentioned Two Hearts apparel. Yeah, I gotta get my own. But this is amazing. And you look like a totally different person. Like some of the advocacy you're doing, you've been asking for, people to become donors and things like that. So how's what does that mean to you in terms of why is it important to you to kind of share your story and then kind of ask people, give people some call to action and things like that?
I think it's definitely for a part of giving back, because I wish for me that U.S. would have a opt-out system versus opt-in, because with as many people that could have a normal life through transplant, I think just to not do that is kind of selfish move in a lot of ways, because it's not going to be something that you're going to be using after you die. Plus, like the stats, and last I heard from Donate Life here in the U.S. was 90% of people believe in donating their organs, but only 60% put action behind it. Then even when somebody passes, whatever, the only 1% of those organs are be able to use just because either damage or other things go on. So it's just like the odds are just not in the favor of people waiting on the list, because I think it was like 22 people a day die just waiting. Yes. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a big number, because I know, you have tens of thousands of people on the list and you only have 2,000-3,000 a year. It can be more, and kind of see how we can help it. And then obviously share the story. And I myself, like I'm on a waiting list, but the other thing I've told people I have, I'm also a donor in a way. So I kind of, I'm also signing up. Even if I wasn't on the list, I would have done that. But it's important that we don't know who we're going to help. In the meantime, it's the best solution we have. So it's important that I think everybody listen, everybody supports it, and take the time to do it. It's like you said, 90% of them want to do it, but taking that first step is sometimes as easy as going to a website or even asking your doctor.
It's so easy to register, and actually, if you scroll back down a little bit, there's a picture of a man and a girl right there. So that is actually my donor.
Oh my God!
And his daughter. So his daughter reached out to me. I sent my letter after 6 months, and she actually reached out to me via Facebook, actually, back in the beginning of this year. So, yeah. So that is John. He is actually my heart donor. He's actually from the state over in Louisiana.
Wow, that's special.
Yeah. It was because his next kin was actually his dad, but the granddad gave the option to the grandkids of like what to do. They waited a few months to reach out to me after they got my letter, but it's very meaningful just to kind of know who he is. And like we've had some communication, like what he likes, stuff like that. And just really about his personality. And that was a big thing to me, is knowing that. So I can pretty much honor him the best way I can.
Wow, that's amazing. And I already can testify that, you will honor him. I'm confident in that. And, by the best way to do it is already what you're doing. And you probably have ideas already. But this is impressive. This is amazing. And I'm feeling a bit emotional now already. Even, you're able to have that connection. So that's special. I have to close with discussion around coffee. I know we talked about it a few times, but how often do you drink coffee, and what is your favorite coffee at the moment? I just make it at the moment because it could have varied, but if you have an all-time favorite, we'd love to hear it too.
So my all-time favorite coffee, it's going to sound a little philosophical, but it's whatever cup's in front of you. So I've worked in super specialty coffee shops. I've also worked in a coffee corporation, not Starbucks. But I had a guy, he's like, the best cup is the one in front of you, because it's how you share it. It's that taking that moment that it's just you and that cup sometimes. If it's with friends, if it's with you sitting on a porch or whatever that is, that cup in front of you is the best cup you have. So, yeah, that's kind of my philosophy. So, yeah.
I love that philosophy. And the reason I love it more is I connected with presence, as you were saying. And I mean, like I'm thinking, being here, being present, take what you have here, enjoy what you have now. I have a lot of these conversations. It's always one. What are your last words in general? What do you have to say to your support system, starting with your wife? And what do you have to say to the general public? I think that would be a good way to wrap this up. And then we'll come back to your philosophy again.
So first to my wife, thank you for all that you've done the last few years, the sacrifice and what you're doing now. Like, I can't even figure out how to repay you for that. I love you, baby. But yeah, we literally just passed our 14-year marriage anniversary Monday on the 25th. But as far as the general public, know that the LVAD is not what you see on TV all the times. It's more than just somebody cutting the cord and that's it. There is life besides just carrying the bag. Like for people that's in the process of possibly ability of LVAD, it's not the end of life. There's definitely more life to live with it. Look at cruise ship. He's still weightlifting, doing his thing. Look at other people out there with LVADs that is not a death sentence. It may feel like it. It's definitely adjustment, but it's not over.
Yes. I love it. It's not the end of the road. And I think on that note, we'll conclude this episode. And as always, I tell people it's to be continued because there's so much to live for. You're doing so much already, and I'm looking forward to the documentary, especially. I love arts in general because I'm a very bad artist. I can understand, but I love your photography, and I love to connect with that. And we'll make sure that we leave the links in our show notes and everything for everybody else to see and to appreciate, and then to share and to like and to save. So thank you so much again, John, for this moment and for sharing your life. And for that, we're grateful for you, grateful for all you do in life, grateful for all you're having. And we're excited for what's about to come.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We are reminded that we are all connected through our experiences of friends, family, and community. We thank our guests for your generosity of heart, looking beyond your sorrows to share your journeys and inspire others. And thank you for listening to this episode. We hope it did your heart good. Visit us online for more resources at heartofagiant.org.